Kicking off the list at number 10. Vampire King. If there's one thing we need, it's more Vampire Hulk. I mean, right? That's what you were just thinking of. Also, scariest thing you can imagine, easily. He made his first debut at Ultimate Comics Avengers issue 3, and at first he was actually Nerd Hulk, which we see in the MCU right now. God, I hope he doesn't turn into a vampire. Or maybe I do, I don't know. Now, he was a clone of the Hulk that Captain America could take down, so he was smart, but he couldn't win a physical fight. So the Avengers kinda kicked him out. They're like, great, you're smart, but you can't punch, so beat it, pal. Rude. But that's when the next version of Nerd Hulk came to be. He was bitten by a vampire and took over an entire vampire horde. Now, the solution to a vampire Hulk was easier than we might have thought. Just teleport him into sunlight. And that's exactly what happened in Ultimate Avengers 18. We definitely need this guy to come back, especially now, post-COVID. He'd make a mark. Number 9, the Magician. A magician, the Magician. Who is he? The first Ultimate X-Men character that doesn't actually have a counterpart. So the Magician is OG in the Ultimates. Meet Elliot Boggs. He made his grand entrance at Ultimate X-Men issue 66, created by Robert Kirkman and Tom Rainey. Now, he was always dedicated to protect humanity, which is a great thing in a superhero. We want that. But when his powers came to be, the police thought that Elliot was the cause of his parents' death. Rightfully so. I mean, this guy can warp reality, but he can't even control it. So you don't really want to be around him, but you kind of want to be around him. He was able to create people, which is a pretty amazing ability. Dangerous, but amazing. So he worked with the X-Men for a bit, and then he worked with the Academy of Tomorrow for a bit, and then Nick Fury secretly talked to Xavier in hopes to get the Magician into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody. Now, the team attacked Elliot after some drama. They thought he was a threat, so he just created more villains. He just created more instances of Multiple Man, Blob, and Toad from the Brotherhood to attack. And Wolverine finished the kid off with his claws to the chestal plate, and it turns out that was just a manifestation, and Elliot was actually still alive. He just needs to disappear to work on his power. Fair. Where are you now? Is it good? Come back. I don't know. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It's really helpful for our channel. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your constant support. Let's get right back into this list. Number 8. A Teen Mutant. This next one is a one-off. He doesn't have a name, so we're just going to refer to him as Teen Mutant for now. He doesn't last too long. Now, at first, he looks like a regular kid. There's posters on his wall. He's got Wolverine on his wall, which is cool. He reminds me of me a little bit, you know, and the caption says be different. So he took that advice maybe a little bit too far. So he wakes up, he's ready for school, he's looking for breakfast, and his mother is just nowhere to be seen. Only a pile of her clothes remains on the ground. So he calls the cops. Just kidding, he didn't do that. He just went to school after leaving a note. Don't do this, kids. Don't do that at all. On the way there, he sees a collar on the ground, again by itself, just clothing laid on the sidewalk. What's going on? Now, finally, he sees people, so he's not going crazy, which is a relief, but I bet he wishes that he was crazy, because he had this neat ability where people just don't survive being close to him. He hears it from the guy in the poster, Wolverine himself, when he finds him ducking out in a cave. So what happened was, when he hit puberty, this teen, he developed a specific mutation that radiates a series of toxins and acid-like poisons, which wipes out any organic tissue and just turns it into vapor, turns it into mist. The number of the day that he ended up taking out just because he hit puberty was 265. And I thought pimples were bad. Number 7, Silver Searcher. So the name is a little different for Norrin Radd in the Ultimates. He made his first debut in Ultimate Fantastic 4 issue 42. He was teleported to Earth after Reed Richards mistook him for a star that he wanted to harness. So he brought him here. Awesome. It wasn't his fault. So naturally the world was also in chaos because of his arrival. But Norrin said that he would summon his master who would make the population of Earth happier than they've ever been. Fresh water for all, free phone plans, taxing the rich. What is this plan, sir? The Searcher's master was Zenla's ruler at the time. Revka Termaloon Edifax Skyros III. Rolls off the tongue nice and easy. Cool. Also known as the king without enemies. Let's just go with that. So this king would use mind control. That's the trick here, to get mind control and get these humans to worship them. So after Psycho Man took over the Earth, Silver Searcher rescued Mr. Fantastic and asked him to save the planet. Now the Searcher helped the Fantastic Four afterwards and then continued wandering the depths of space. Now we'd love to see a betrayal, especially when it's for the good side, you know? Norrin is great, and in the Ultimates, he is immortal, and he's powerful enough to go against the Phoenix, so yeah, we need more of him. Number 6. Loki. Making his first appearance in the Ultimates 2 issue 1, Loki Odinson was much more powerful here. He has the ability to shuffle time and space, as Thor simply puts it. In the beginning, Loki would fight alongside Thor and Balder. They were the Warriors 3. Now his mother was a prisoner of Odin and asked him to bring her the Norn stones, but while he was stealing them, he took out his brother Balder and of course was banished to Asgard afterwards. Now Loki can literally warp reality in the Ultimates. He can retcon history into anything he wanted to. He could create these events that just never happened, until he was depowered by Odin, of course. Now even after he was depowered, he was still able to put up quite a fight as our normal Loki. Now I want to see more Warriors 3 with them. Like, I would watch a show with just those 3 any day. It's probably gonna come, realistically, at this rate the Marvel's going at. Number 5. Iron Man. Making his first appearance in Ultimate Marvel Team Up issue 4, Ultimate Iron Man has some medical issues as well, but it's much more bizarre this time around. It's not his heart that makes him unique, it's actually his brain. Now he was born a genius, of course, and he was also one of 2 twin boys, the other being Gregory Stark. Now Tony originally wanted to start his own business with his current girlfriend Josie Gardner, but after so much pressure from his father, he decided to join the family business, and Josie ended up leaving Tony because of this. She was like, oh, I thought we had a thing? Okay, see ya. Then 6 months later, Josie tragically passed away in a plane crash. Now the plane crash was orchestrated by Mandarin International, which was a company that used to work with Howard Stark earlier, but cut ties. Drama. So Howard wanted Tony to put all that pain into work for the company, but Tony was like, you know what, I think nanotechnology is where I'm gonna put that energy. So after his father's passing, Tony then had to fully take over the company, but by then he was a troubled celebrity, he was an alcoholic, and things got even harder for Tony when he was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. So he mixed his biotech with armor and he bought himself some time. Now Ultimate Tony Stark's tumor was actually an Infinity Stone growing in his brain, so with the nanotech body and everything, it just made him stronger, so much stronger. So this gave Tony the ability to transfer his consciousness between other machines. He's actually friends with his brain tumor in this world. His name is actually Anthony. It's a little boy. It's like a separate living hallucination boy. Totally normal. Number 4. Colossus. Making his first appearance in the 1610 universe with Ultimate X-Men issue 1, Peter Rasputin aka Colossus was discovered during the Cold War. He was attacked by Anatol Spichkin, but when it was confirmed that Peter was indeed a mutant, a deal was made instead. Anatol would keep his secret and he was so ready to give Peter a job, but down the road, if he ever needed one, he had a job for him down the road. Of course, he was a giant guy made of metal. He's like, hey, I got some for you to do, trust me. Roofing, stapling, some hammering, we can find you some things. Peter's father, like most fathers in these comics, was not a pleasant man, so Peter thought, you know what, I could use some of that help now, let's go. And then he went back to Anatol because the thing is, Ultimate Colossus had thick skin, literally he was made of steel, but he wasn't strong enough where it really made a huge difference. I mean, sure, drywall is easier to punch through, but it was heavy. Like, imagine wearing a skin suit of metal. The Tin Man probably had insane calves, but it wasn't until Anatol introduced Peter to this drug called Banshee, and that's where he got the strength behind those metal mitts. So now Colossus, on narcotics, was taking on these jobs, these super strong tourist gigs, and at the age of 19, Peter was picked up from Big Boris, a Russian mafia boss, and then he worked with him for 10 years. So he just joined the mafia for 10 years from 19 to 29. You know, the usual thing you do after you're 19. He kept his powers a secret mostly for those around him, and then one day during a botched arm deal, Peter and his team were shot at. Peter survived because of his thick skin, and his mutant ability was also exposed in a much greater way. He was kind of screwed until Jean Grey found him and then offered him a spot with the X-Men. That's actually where he got the codename Colossus. Now this version is unreal. He's close with Wolverine as they both share, you know, horrible backgrounds. They would walk the streets at night just trying to solve these dark cases, looking for trouble. Imagine these two bumping into you. No chance. In Ultimate War, he took on Thor and Iron Man at the same time for 10 minutes. So, how wild is that? Number 3. Ultimate Red Skull. Making his debut in the Ultimate Comics Avengers 1 back in 2009, Ultimate Red Skull is, I know, a villain, but he wasn't always that way. He's a lot different than the Red Skull that we know from our main continuity. He's actually the son of Steve Rogers in this universe and Gail Richards. They even hid him and trained him to become the next Captain America. The Ultimates are wild. This is the dream scenario. but he always feared that he would never live up to his father's expectations. Now, it's not like he was raised in a bad household, it was kind of the opposite. He was raised to become a superhero. He was raised to fill some rather big boots. He was raised to become the next Captain America after he was declared dead in Iceland. So he kind of had the dream job, and he was more powerful than Steve Rogers as well. So what happened? So when we're talking about comebacks, I really think Ultimate Red Skull could have been a treat. Now, he was eventually in charge of the military that he grew up with. He figured out now that he was a leader, and he used it against them. His personality as well was pretty easygoing, so it wasn't hard to convince anybody what he was doing. But again, he had this mental wall where he could never live up to Father Rogers. So at age 17, he escaped and took out every doctor and soldier on that team. He just wiped everybody out. So evil. And then he used a kitchen knife to really complete the whole Red Skull look. A nice do-it-yourself makeover. Nice and haunting. So he had all the tools to be great, but that pressure of Steve Rogers took him down the wrong path. Interesting. Number 2, Magneto. He made his first appearance in Ultimate X-Men issue 1. Eric Lenscher was born to 2 Canadian agents of Weapon X. Now, he got his abilities and mastered magnetism at a young age, and his father didn't respond well to that. He was intoxicated most of the time, and he attacked Eric one day. Not an ideal living situation for a child. Now, he tried to shoot Eric once, but those powers naturally came out, and then Eric pushed the bullet right back. So Eric had to spend his teen years with that guilt weighing down on him. Now, eventually he was disgusted with Weapon X, the whole idea of finding a cure for the mutant gene through means of. So he used these abilities, freed Mutant X, Wolverine, who I talked about in part 1 of this list, which you for sure watched. And then Eric married a human woman named Isabel, but he left her once he met Charles Xavier. They didn't fall in love. He was fascinated. This is the first adult mutant that he's ever met, and they share the same ideologies on them. So Eric grabbed these mutant kids from a previous lover, and then denied ever loving a human woman. Rough. The Brotherhood relocated to the Savage Land a few years later, and then Eric started referring to the mutants as an army, which is bad news. He was changing, as were his views on this whole mutant operation. He even started going by the name Magneto, totally abandoned his human name, and then Xavier was no longer on board. I mean, this is Supervillain 101. Anybody can see a villain in the making, especially if you can read minds. That sure does help. So Magneto made a helmet that prevented that from ever happening. This helmet prevented psi intrusion into his mind, and it also looked cool. So when Charles took a few loyal followers and made a run for it, Magneto was pretty upset and broke Charles' spine, leaving him in the wheelchair. And finally, number 1, we have Miles Morales. He made his first appearance in Ultimate Fallout issue 4, just a couple months before the death of Peter Parker. Now, Norman Osborn was arrested and revealed as the Green Goblin, and then a young thief broke into that empty Osborn industry, and then that's where a genetically enhanced spider found its way into the thief's backpack. Now, while Miles Morales was visiting his Uncle Aaron, that spider just happened to crawl out of Uncle Aaron's bag, and then it bit Miles Morales. He of course got these amazing abilities, the Spider-Man abilities, but on top of that, he could also turn invisible, which is a pretty sweet gig. That plus Stun Blast makes Miles pretty hard to take down. Now the thing is, what makes him unique is at first, Miles didn't really want to be a hero. He wanted to leave that up to the real Spider-Man until his untimely departure, saving his family from Osborn. So Miles got to the scene, but it was too late and too ahead of him. So he felt guilt after this for not being able to save Peter, so he suited up and joined the battle. His first villain was against Kangaroo, and he took him on wearing a Spider-Man Halloween costume, which is a great look. I honestly love Miles. I'm so happy he's in a bigger part of the Spider-Verse that we're currently in, and I'm betting that we meet live-action Miles Morales in the next Spider-Man movie. I think that's the only thing they've managed to keep a secret about that film. I'm calling it now. Number 10, Hawkeye. Ultimate Hawkeye first appeared in Ultimate issue 7, and he doesn't mind going for the kill this time around. He was a SHIELD agent who wasn't as fancy when it came to arrows. He's just more military this time around. It's actually pretty dark at times. He became a super soldier once briefly when the Avengers were put on the USS Jimmy Carter. They got captured, and then Hawkeye and a few others ingested super soldier serum, and then they rescued Nick Fury. Hawkeye is a pretty sweet agent. He's badass, he gets it done, but his family life and dynamic with Black Widow this time around is much different than most would think. When a team of mercenaries broke into Clint's house early on, they took out his wife and kids, which is awful. But it gets even worse when you find out that Black Widow was the leader of said mercenary team. And then Hawkeye gets even in a pretty gruesome way. 3 arrows, perfectly placed. Gory. Pretty gory, very gory. Number 9, Nick Fury. When he entered the Ultimate and Marvel Team Up issue 5, Nick Fury would soon take over as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. And his first plan was to bring back the Super Soldier program, which actually resulted in the creation of Ultimate Captain America and Ultimate Hulk, etc. His origins are pretty unique. I mean, he fought for the US in World War II, and tragically he was taken by force to be the next test subject for Project Rebirth. When he was injected with this new serum, it gave him super strength, and in turn, he freed himself and other prisoners and busted out of there. So now he's got quite the power behind those punches, and Ultimate Nick Fury is way cooler than our 616 Nick Fury because he was designed to look like Samuel L. Jackson, so it's really no contest. And before we continue on with this list of ultimate heroes, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help our channel out a lot. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let's go right back into this list. Thank you so much. Number 8, Nightcrawler. Kurt Wagner made his ultimate debut in Ultimate X-Men issue 7. Now his origins here had him growing up in the Weapon X program, and he was trained to become an assassin from the start. He had a pretty dark upbringing, and in turn he would have these bad pockets with the X-Men. Like Warren and Dazzler were a couple, but Kurt also liked Dazzler, so he kidnapped her? Okay. And the team was like, hey, so we're gonna put you in a coma now because that's not cool. We can't really do that. And then he came back and he apologized. The dust was settled, no hard feelings. Okay, sure. He joined Colossus' X-Men team with Dazzler and Angel, by the way, so it was definitely fine. Kurt wasn't all bad. He was actually kind of funny, I mean, as a character, because sometimes he would use the Danger Room with Angel to reenact Pirates of the Caribbean instead of, fighting bad guys. So already this version is my kind of guy. I mean, minus the kidnapping part, of course. Him and Angel were tight because they couldn't hide their mutations, so they ended up being best of friends. So they fought pirates together, chased the same girls, they're living the mutant dream in a way. Not bad. Sadly, Kurt was killed by Magneto's ultimatum wave, and it got a lot of other X-Men killed as well. So it's dark, it's nice, and then it's dark. That's the Ultimates. Number 7, the Hulk. First appearing in Ultimate Marvel Team Up issue 2, he's still big, he's still angry, but this time around he is gray. Okay. Now before this, however, Bruce Banner wanted to be just like Captain America, back before he was the Hulk, back before he was big and strong. So at Cambridge University, he was committed to duplicating the Super Soldier Serum with helps of Nick Fury's Super Soldier blood. So he used it on himself, and honestly, already I'm a fan of Bruce Banner more. I mean, the Hulk hasn't even been created yet, and then Nick Fury, the first Super Soldier, gathered the best genetic engineers to recreate the serum, and Bruce was luckily amongst them. So Bruce actually thought that he figured this thing out, but again, he wanted to be like Cap and he wanted to stay quiet, so he tested this new serum out on himself, and then he ended up becoming Ultimate Hulk. Later on, Bruce decided to make even more serum, so he mixed Super Soldier Serum again with this new Hulk serum, smashed them together, injected himself, so now Super Soldier Nick Fury actually made Banner the Hulk in this timeline. That's a cool sentence right there. Number 6. Deadpool. Meet Wade Wilson. He had a pretty rough go in the Ultimates, as do most of them. I'd say more intense than his 616 counterpart, because in Ultimate Spider-Man, Wilson gets hired by the Ganosian government, but of course in Deadpool's spirit, he gets hired to double down and hunt these mutants, but it's also a TV event. It's fun. And then when Deadpool is going up against Spider-Man, he actually gets unmasked. And his appearance is even more shocking in this reality. Even the host has to apologize to the viewers at home because his mask, I mean, to begin with, wasn't even really a mask. It's translucent, so not really the best. And then Spider-Man even adds insult to injury, saying that his face smells like a KFC dumpster on a hot day. So if anybody needs redemption, it's definitely Wade Wilson from the Ultimates. Number 5, Juggernaut. The first time we see him, it's very clear that he's more powerful. Something is up with this X-Men. He looked like a future version of the Juggernaut. It was pretty intimidating. Now he looks like an evil stripper from the future, which is, honestly, I like it. It's cool. He was a genius in this universe as well. I mean, literally, the guy was super smart. He grew up in the same trailer park as Rogue, and he still considered himself trailer trash, although he was one of the smartest people alive. Guys, never doubt yourself. Things took a turn when he was taken by Weapon X and forced to be this living weapon of mass destruction. Then following the orders of Colonel John Wraith, he was part of their strike force that took out the X-Men, or even worse, forced the X-Men into Weapon X, which we heard plenty of early on in this list. He walked tall and mighty until he got taken out in the dumbest way possible. Like the Juggernaut, this makes me upset. He for sure needs a redemption, that's all I'm saying. Even when he's fighting Rogue later on, he still wants them to be happy and in love. He still wants that dream, so he's still a good guy deep down. And then Ultimate X-Men issue 99, in the middle of a fight, he gets taken down because of a poisonous dart. A dart. Yeah, just one of those. That's it. The Juggernaut got taken out by a dart. It went right through his visor gap. I mean, amazing aim, but come on. This is the same guy that dropped a building on Gambit? Number 4, Mr. Fantastic. Reed Richards needs a redemption on screen before anything else. I mean, the last Fantastic Four movie, I mean, if you haven't watched it, honestly, don't. Marvel's redoing them soon. You might as well just wait it out. In the Ultimate version, it was dark, and he was younger, and honestly, he was cooler. He made his first appearance in Ultimate Fantastic Four issue 1, and even at the start of Ultimatum, when that big wave hit, Sue bites the bullet, and he didn't waste any time. He's not happy. He immediately blames Namor, and by blaming, I mean he knocks him out first and then asks questions later. Okay, Reed, chill. Eventually, he becomes a villain in this universe, referring to himself as the Maker, and caused some trouble in the 616 universe as well, after his universe was destroyed. Now, this is the Mr. Fantastic that we need. This guy gets the job done. He's scary. Number 3, Wolverine. Making his first appearance in Ultimate X-Men issue 1, he didn't remember his past, and he thinks that he was once married. He has a ring, and he thinks Sabretooth killed his family. It's all a blur. Stressful. No thanks to Weapon X. Now, Ultimate James Howlett is actually the first mutant, and it turns out that this time around, you can kill Wolverine. You just have to rip his bones out that happen to have adamantium built into it. That ought to do it. Also, so painful. This all takes place during the Fatal Attractions event, and Wolverine doesn't even have a chance to scream. The adamantium that bonded to his bones erupted outward like water bursting through a dam. There's a nice picture for you. And he's still breathing when this happens. I mean, if this isn't one of the worst things to go through, I don't know what is. Number 2, Thor. Making his first entry in the Ultimates with issue 4, Thor Odinson actually looks a lot like our current MCU Thor, and I think he might have more in common than we think. For starters, the Ultimate Thor needs a magic belt to have powers, and in Spider-Man Homecoming, Happy mentions Thor's magic belt and all the stuff that they're packing up on Moving Day. So Thor just might need this come Love and Thunder, but in the comics, Loki was convincing everybody that Thor is just an insane dude with a magic belt. And they kind of bought it. What happens was, he wasn't worthy yet, so he got his ass kicked, and then finally in Ultimates 2, issue 12, he gets his powers back. But the fact that this Thor went through all that to begin with, so sad. Definitely so sad. Number 1, Quicksilver. Okay, yeah, he's in love with his sister in the Ultimates, and it's weird, and it's gross. Yeah, sure. But this Quicksilver otherwise was far more superior. He was faster in the Ultimate Universe, he was supersonic when it comes to speeds. He almost reached the speed of light at one point, like, come on, dude. And as long as he's still alive, he can always re-heal himself. In Ultimate Wolverine issue 3, Pietro grabs Logan and runs with him. He was actually trying to tear the flesh off him, and if it was anybody else but Wolverine, it probably would have worked. And in Ultimate Comics 29, he heals himself using his super fast metabolism, and he uses his super speed to study Reed Richards' notes. He says he's not smart, but he is fast, so he ran the math nearly 100,000 times. That's insane. Quicksilver needs a comeback for sure, more so on screen than I think any superhero right now. Hashtag Ralph Boner.
Number 10, Green Lantern MULLEIN. While Jo hasn't gone anywhere yet, I'm still loath to lose her. Lantern MULLEIN is the newest Green Lantern to be introduced in the last Young Animals series that we have left, THOR Sector. This comic is amazing, by the way, and if you haven't read it, you should. It's written by the amazing science fiction and fantasy writer N.K. Jemisin, with stunning art and colors by Jamal Campbell. Truly a gorgeous and intriguing book. Although THOR Sector isn't yet finished, Jo also has yet to make an appearance in, well, any other series. If she does seem to stay within the THOR Sector series alone, we need to find a way to get her into some other books. This is a character whose story needs to continue because it's just so good. Admittedly, this is also a creative team I will be sad to see possibly disband. Number 9, ROCKSLIDE. So ROCKSLIDE just passed away in the comics, with us losing him in the Ten of Swords event, starting off in Creation. We then got to mourn him in X Factor issue 4, which is part 2 of the story in the event. But even though he just left us and we got some closure and grieving in, as well as a weird, twisted replacement version, I already find myself missing ROCKSLIDE and wanting him back. He was one of the often referred to as next-gen mutants, and I always felt like ROCKSLIDE never really got his fair due when it came to his development and stories. Yet he was such a cool character. Although I know not everyone can be resurrected forever, I hope that the mutants do find a way to bring him back and to fix this whole resurrection issue in the long run. Who else could we possibly be losing in Ten of Swords, never to return? I cannot bear it. Number 8, the Nova Corps in the MCU. Nova Corps didn't even get an on-screen death in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We simply heard of the entire Nova Corps death in passing, which is honestly tragic, because if we don't somehow see them return, it means that we'll never get a Nova. Considering that the MCU could be heading in the direction of Young Avengers when it comes to changing up their hero roster in the near future, and perhaps we could even get a Champions team with Ms. Marvel joining the MCU, it would be cool to see the Nova Corps somehow return. maybe at least a few of them survived. This would likely be crucial in order for us to get any of the Novas that we know and love from the comics. Number 7. The Spectre. The Spectre is a hero slash neutral figure slash sometimes villain that has recently been reduced to supporting roles and pop-up appearances in the comics. In the comics, the Spectre is back to being Jim Corrigan, but I also just miss when the Spectre was fallen Green Lantern at the time, Hal Jordan. We have recently seen the Spectre pop up in the 2019 Justice League in one of the latest arcs, but I honestly would love to see the character get his own solo series again. He hasn't really been focused on in that way since the Hal Jordan days, but he's such a powerful and interesting character. It would be cool to see him become more prominently featured again. Number 6. Heimdall. One of the most underutilized characters in the MCU in my opinion. Heimdall is both an Asgardian and Vanir in the comics, meaning basically that he is descended from the gods. His mother herself was the goddess of the sea. He was appointed as the guardian of the Rainbow Bridge by Odin himself due to his powers of perception. Heimdall has the power to see and hear from a great distance through space and time. Spidey Sense got nothing on his abilities. In the MCU, we knew Heimdall as the guardian of the bridge as well, but he also perished during Endgame along with all of the surviving Asgardians following the catastrophic events of Ragnarok. However, although he might appear to be gone in the MCU, Idris Elba has been reported as expressing his interest in seeing Heimdall somehow return. Elba knows that Heimdall is essentially part of the God family and as such would be into returning in Love and Thunder. Hopefully, director and co-writer Taika Waititi is also interested. Number 5. The Question. The Question is a hero who has seen a lot of change since his first introduction in DC Comics. In the time since the character's introduction, we have had Vic Sage, Renee Montoya, an unknown figure, and Charlie Vic Zaz, who is basically another version of Vic Sage, all take up the mantle. While we appear to mostly be back to Vic Sage as the current Question in the new 52 continuity belonging to Prime Earth, he also has only made a few appearances. He randomly helped Amanda Waller run the Suicide Squad for a bit before reappearing as a villain in that story when he tried to basically take the Suicide Squad from her and turn against Amanda Waller, and made a brief appearance in Heroes in Crisis, but we haven't seen the Question in a solo series as a hero for what feels like forever. Not an ongoing solo series since the Charlie Vic Sage iteration from New Earth, who had a series in 2005. The closest that we've actually got is his Black Label limited series from 2020, which spanned 4 issues. Which is still really good, but you know, it's not an ongoing, it's not a long one. I want more than a limited series. Number 4. Rom the Space Knight. Rom the Space Knight is a character who hasn't been seen in the Marvel Universe since Marvel lost the rights to the character in the 80s. Rom the Space Knight was actually originally a toy that Marvel was leased the rights to by Parker Brothers starting in 1979. In 1986, Marvel lost the rights to the character but managed to hold on to the Space Knights in general. Rom still has comics being made, but the rights to his character are currently owned by IDW Publishing instead. IDW last few series have been limited series featuring the character, the latest being Rom Dire Race, which had to have its 3rd issue delayed due to the global crisis, although we should be seeing that in December. While the comics IDW has been creating recently have been alright, with some superfans falling head over heels in love with them, it would be nice to see Rom return to the level of popularity he once had back in the 80s. In 2015, it was announced that Paramount Pictures / Hasbro Allspark were actually working towards a Rom the Space Knight feature film. In 2018, it was believed that Ready Player One writer Zach Penn was actually working on that script, but lately it's been all quiet on the Rom movie news front. Here's hoping that it eventually comes to fruition and helps to mark a surge in Rom's demand and popularity once again. We want more Rom the Space Knight. Number 3. Ben Reilly. While Ben has made an appearance opposing Conan in the comic series Conan Battle for the Serpent Crown earlier this year in issue number 2, the truth is we haven't seen Ben Reilly doing his own thing for a couple of years. His series Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider ended in 2018, and he made an appearance in Spider-Geddon, but of course, so did a bunch of other Spider folks, because Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon are kind of all about the Spider people coming together. Ben Reilly is a fan favorite when it comes to alternate Spider-Man, and it would be awesome to see him get his own solo series once more. Check in and see what kind of adventures Ben is up to currently. Number 2. Black Widow. In the MCU, we all know Natasha is now dead, but I don't think I'm the only superfan that is hoping we might get a chance to see her somehow come back to life or return. Black Widow has also died in the comics before and returned by the way of Red Room clones, so it's not impossible considering how much the Red Room seems to be featured in her self-titled feature film that she could be returning this way. We have also heard reports that Scarlett Johansson has signed a deal which would see her return to the MCU in some capacity, though just because we heard it from a reliable source doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Even if Yelena Belova, played by Florence Pugh, becomes the new Black Widow in the cinematic universe, which would be awesome, fans of Natasha's are still going to be hoping we see her return. Honestly, there is so much more that could be explored with Nat is what it comes down to. I feel as though the MCU only really just scratched the surface before they killed her off in Endgame. And all because she just didn't have a traditional family, really. The fans demand justice! Number 1. Wally West. So while we do have Wally in the comics right now as he's involved in Flash Forward, we kinda lost the Wally West we were hoping to have in the comics due to the events of Heroes in Crisis. When I say we, I guess I should say some. I'm sure not everyone feels this way, but I know there were quite a few who felt betrayed by the fact that Wally returned to the comics only to be made a temporary villain who was later condemned not just by other heroes but by himself in the aftermath. It's like we just got him back before losing him again. Now he's off trying to redeem himself, but there are many fans who wish that wasn't the case, and that he didn't have to redeem himself at all, as Wally West is known usually for being like the best of the best. Poor Wally West. Thank you so much.